Well, good evening, America. It is 7 p.m. It is Tuesday, June 30th, and this is Queer News Tonight, the world's first live LGBTQ daily evening news. It is time to queer up the news. First tonight in breaking queer news, an exciting new announcement. An amazing new digital television show is coming for the LGBTQ community called Gay Town Hall, advertising you participate in the LGBT debate. And we have a sneak peek of the opening of this new show that will premiere this Thursday, July 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern. Watch this, first time ever. Well, as you can see, the largest collection of diverse LGBTQ personalities ever assembled will host this exciting and unique new show. Q News has already met 10 of the hosts, and tonight we get to meet Gerardo Marcano. Before we talk to him, watch this. Well, super exciting. Tonight we introduce you to Gerardo Marcano. He is coming from Harlem, New York. Gerardo is a queer social worker from Harlem who is sensitive about equality issues and will always hate any kind of box you try to put him in. And those are his words. Welcome, Gerardo, to Q News Tonight. Good evening.
Me.
So you are a host of this exciting new show. I've just seen this opening for your show on Thursday for the first time. It looks super exciting. What a collection of personalities it's going to be.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to speaking with everyone and having some really interesting conversations about power, privilege, positionality, gender expression, and just all those unique things that make us such a diverse community.
Well, it's interesting. You are now the 11th host that I have met for the launch of this new show. And there's cannabis activists, there's pansexuals, there's asexuals, there's feminine lesbians, there are sex-positive underwear models, there's porn stars, and I could insert fill in the blank from there. How will a social worker from Harlem interact with all of those personalities?
Well, I'm here for it all. I'm all about sex positivity. I'm all about representing the community and just all the different aspects. Social worker is going to be a big advocate for everyone in the community. So what I'm getting out of it is my sincere hope is to be able to listen to just what the matters that are important to everyone, and to be able to advocate for them.
This new show, Gay Town Hall, multiple people since we started introducing hosts that are on this show have asked me about it, and I keep saying my understanding of it is it's like Zoom on steroids. It's talking about all kinds of topics and stories that are important to the LGBT community specifically, but from unique and different perspectives from people in the community. So you could talk about sexual issues, you could talk about social work, it could be talking about Donald Trump, or it could be talking about bathhouses, and I think everything in between. Are you looking forward to talking about bathhouses?
Most definitely. Let's talk about bathhouses. Let's talk about keeping yourself safe. Let's talk about PrEP. Let's talk about just condom use. Let's talk about just everything that's important to us, and our freedom of choice, and the importance of you equals you, and undetectable equals untransmittable, and the best ways about keeping us safe.
I'm curious, Gerardo, any particular host that you're going to be working with on this show that you're really excited to be working with?
And I'm speaking with each host has something different and unique to bring to the table. I really enjoyed the segment on Houston. I also have one of my Native American rattles today. I wanted to shake my Native American rattle, but it's on the other side of the room, so I'm not going to fetch it now. But Houston, you were incredible last night, and thank you for representing the Native American community. As a proud Latino, Boricua, Puerto Rican, I represent all the aspects of me, and that includes my Taino heritage.
You know, and terrific. I'm sure Houston Cypress is thrilled that you called him out. America, if you did not see it, one of the hosts is a native Miccosukee tribal member, has grown up in the Everglades, and represents two-spirited philosophy, and explained very well how LGBT is incorporated in Native culture in America among Native tribes. And he is also an advocate of psychedelic drugs. And so the conversation is going to be just incredible from this person from the Miccosukee tribe of Florida in the Everglades. Just amazing. Well, Gerardo, we're really excited to watch you Thursday night, this coming Thursday night, 8 o'clock, a gay town hall. It's the first time anything like this has ever been attempted, to bring this many personalities from our LGBT community together to talk. And best of all, in this show, America, you get to participate. If you would like to appear right along with Gerardo, you can, on image, in camera, and participate on Zoom in steroids. You can also participate in the textual string of comments. Your comment can be put right into the screen, right in front of Gerardo, and ask him a question or talk about something that he has said, and it can be discussed right in the town hall live. Nothing's ever been done quite like this. And I can't help but wonder, Gerardo, last related question. I keep saying this, of this unique combination of all of these LGBT personalities. Something this unique has never been tried before. Are you afraid that we're going to find out on Friday morning there's a very good reason why this has never been tried before?
You know, let's bring it. Let's bring it on and just see where it takes us. If we have something to be afraid about on Friday morning, then we'll find out Friday morning, but we'll deal with it. I think we're going to have good communication, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really exciting. And if there's some little glitches along the way and some interactions that might be a little bit of tension, I'm ready for it.
All
I'm
right.
also
No, go ahead.
yeah, and so so you know, I consider myself to be a good bridge and a good communication bridge for communication. So if there's some tension, you know, I might be a little bit of a peacemaker in there.
All right. Well, I can assure you, you're my 11th host that I have gotten to meet through Q News Tonight. There's likely going to be a little tension, just thinking in advance. So it's going to be very exciting. I can't wait. It's going to be fun. America, you'll want to tune in for this. Nothing like this has ever been seen before. And this, remember, is completely live. It is all completely live. So Gerardo Mercado, coming from Harlem, New York, a social worker. I'm going to try to figure out what kind of box I'm going to try to put you in.
I'll find my way out that box. I'll find my way out that box. You can put
Well,
me in it, but I'm going to crawl my way out.
Well, good luck. I know it's going to be a mammoth success. I have so many of my friends that have commented and talked about what's getting ready to happen this Thursday, July 2nd at 8 o'clock. And good luck to you in this new show.
Thank you.
All right. America, we say good evening again. It is 7 p.m. It is Tuesday, June 30th, 2020, the last day of June. It's time to queer up the news. As you can already see, we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Well, welcome back, America, and thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. We are live. This is a live show, so anything can happen. Tonight, we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBTQ community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and this is guest anchor, Chef Josie, running for mayor in the gayest place on planet Earth, Welton Manors, and also guest anchor David Hopkins. So let's queer up the news. Tonight we bring you first queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in America is diverse. The LGBTQ community around the world is vast. So we bring you the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. We begin our headlines with Queer Up Health. Gilead reports prices of the new coronavirus drug at over $2,000 a patient. Watch this.
Good morning, Joe. So remember that Gilead had agreed to donate its existing supply of remdesivir through the end of June. So now it is putting a price on that drug. The price for the United States is going to be $520 per vial, or $3,120 for the typical course of treatment. That is higher than in other developed countries, where the price will be $2,340 for the entire course of treatment. Gilead says that's because of the way the drug discounting system in the United States works. Nonetheless, whichever price you look at is lower than some were expecting, of at least $5,000 per course. Gilead says if it was doing its typical calculations on how to price a drug, and they priced it by how much they were saving the U.S. healthcare system, and remember this drug reduces hospital stays by 4 days, they said that would result in savings of $12,000 per patient. So they argue this is quite a discount.
As one of the only drugs shown to alter the course of COVID-19, antiviral remdesivir is in high demand. In a controversial move that unmistakably resembles price gouging, Gilead Sciences announced on Monday an official price point of $2,340 per patient for wealthier nations. This price covers the full treatment for the virus and works out to be around $100 per pill in total.
Yeah, I love how they just make up the price by saying, well, if the hospital's going to save this much, we can charge that much. Healthcare should not work that way. That's why we need regulation in this country.
This is, again, another example of how our healthcare system is not working for everyone. Until we create a solution, this is going to continue to go on. This has to be stopped.
Well, I thought in conjunction news to this, It was interesting that in the last 60 days, 500,000 additional people have gone on to Obamacare because of the healthcare crisis we have in the United States. It'll be interesting to watch what happens with Gilead's new drug in relation to that.
Next, we queer up the USA. Supreme Court overrules Louisiana abortion restrictions 5-4. Watch this.
Today's ruling struck down a Louisiana law that would have made that even harder, requiring abortion doctors to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. Chief Justice John Roberts joined the court's 4 more liberal members in the 5-4 decision. He said the law was identical to one from Texas that the court struck down 4 years ago. Even though he dissented in the Texas case, he said today that it is binding precedent, so Louisiana's law cannot stand. President Trump's 2 nominees, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, were among the dissenters. Clarence Thomas said the court's abortion precedents are grievously wrong and should be overturned. Kavanaugh didn't go that far and said the court should have sent the case back to gather more facts on how the Louisiana law would work.
Louisiana law that prohibited abortions from doctors who lack hospital admitting privilege. This effectively limited women's access to safe abortion options. The law and the court's decision mirrored Texas legislation, which was finally overturned in 2016. Pro-choice activists and abortion rights groups expressed both relief and surprise at the verdict.
I mean, as a woman, I am relieved to see that even in the conservative world we're living in, that we still have some commitment to human rights.
Well, and it's a philosophical marker for the entire Supreme Court and for the country in terms of where we're at. We clearly know the court is in delicate balance. It can go one way or another. It's big news if we see a 6-3, but it's mostly 5-4s. One nice thing that we see here is it is a continual reminder of how important the presidential election is, because who is next is going to significantly change the course of our court for the next decade, for sure.
Louisiana had some of the strictest abortion laws in the country. One of the cases that caused this to go to Supreme Court was a woman who was pregnant with a child who had severe birth defects and had to go all the way to Texas in order to get an abortion because she couldn't under Louisiana law.
Next, let's queer up religion. Vice President Pence spoke to 2,100 people inside a far-right megachurch. Watch this.
But Mr. Vice President, there are millions of Christians in this country, just like me, who are hoping, and we are praying, that when you have finished your term as Vice President in 2024, that you don't move... We are praying that when you have finished your term in 2024, we don't want you moving out of the West Wing. We just want you to move down the hall a few doors and continue to build on the legacy of the most faith-friendly president in history. Would you join me in welcoming a great Christian, a great American, a great friend of First Baptist Church Dallas, the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Following in the president's footsteps, VP Mike Pence lured 2,000 people into an anti-LGBT megachurch for a live event. The church, which did not require masks or social distancing, is located in Dallas, Texas, one of the nation's COVID hotspots. The rapidly xenophobic and outspoken anti-LGBT pastor, Robert Jeffries, did enforce temperature checks and reduced capacity, limiting attendance to 70% of the auditorium maximum. Only time will tell if these meager efforts were enough to effectively minimize the spread of coronavirus among the event's attendees.
I would say that Vice President Mike Pence is one of the scariest people on this planet if he didn't work for the scariest person on this planet.
I don't know how they think our current president is the most faith-friendly one ever. He doesn't have any faith. And while I am actually very proud that we have a sex worker as the first lady, that doesn't really go with the Christian values they try to preach.
Well, I'm going to keep this simple. The Trump administration continues to prove they are part of the problem and not a part of the solution.
True. We continue in Queering Up Religion in that topic heading by reporting tonight an evangelical hate group has asked God to protect their children from Biden's plan to support LGBTQ rights. A daily prayer from the Family Research Council, an anti-LGBTQ lobbying group, promoted a strongly homophobic message asking God to protect the purity of American children from Biden's proposed pro-LGBTQ policies, such as the Equality Act. FRC's prayer called on pure Christians to vote based on biblical principles and to prioritize life, family, and religious liberty issues. The leader of the FRC, Tony Perkins, is allegedly a member of Trump's rumored Evangelical Advisory Board.
Again, with these fake Christians who care about their money in their church, but not the actual teachings of Jesus, like love thy neighbor, he without sin cast the first stone. There's plenty of ways they're getting it completely wrong, and it's become ego and greed driven.
As a Christian, growing up Christian, I will say this: I'm embarrassed by the false prophets who continue to wear the robe of Jesus and stand behind the Bible as a protection and guard. The reality of it is these people are so lucky that we live in the land of the free.
As a Christian, and I report, unfortunately, stories like this, I want to equally take the opportunity that Happening on Television Network supports the largest LGBT church in the world, Sunshine Cathedral. We help them with their live broadcast every Sunday at 10:30. If you want to see something very positive in Christianity, I encourage you to watch. It is an amazing experience. Sunshine Cathedral every Sunday at 10:30.
And in a story sure to upset the people from the last two stories, we queer up gay culture with a black gay trans sex worker is the Google Doodle symbol of pride. Marsha P. Johnson, a well-known trans activist and Stonewall icon, graces the homepage of the internet in her very own Google Doodle. Johnson is often credited with throwing the first brick during the 1969 Stonewall uprising. Well, whether that brick was physical or symbolic has been debated, Johnson's involvement in the advancement of gay rights issues cannot be denied. As a black trans woman, civil rights activist, drag queen, and sex worker, a Google Doodle featuring the, quote, Saint of Christopher Street is a milestone for many marginalized groups.
What a way to wrap up Pride Month with one of our heroes, one of our leaders of our movement, Marsha P. So thank you, Google.
When I got up early this morning, I have an early morning meeting on Q News tonight. The first thing I did was open Google searches. The first thing that opens. When I saw it, I literally gasped. It is one thing for us to support and salute Marsha P. Johnson in our community, but for the largest search engine on the planet to say that at the end of June, on the last day of June, the most important person that we can memorialize is Marsha P. Johnson, really, world, the LGBT community has arrived.
And 51 years after the night that Marsha P. Johnson helped spark, it's so important now that we have this time away from our physical prides to remember our history. And I'm so proud Google did this.
Next, let's queer up gay culture. More than $500,000 raised to protect the future and legacy of New York's historic Stonewall Inn. Last Wednesday, Queer News Tonight brought this story, and now we have some fantastic news. After a wildly successful crowdfunding campaign, the Stonewall Inn appears to be saved from the devastating economic effects of COVID-19. Donors across the world contributed a total of $250,000 to secure the future of the iconic bar, which in many ways served as the backdrop, birthplace, and catalyst for the modern-day gay rights movement. While it is already designated as a U.S. national monument, the prolonged period of closure due to coronavirus lockdowns and restrictions placed the still functioning bar in a tough situation financially. When the owner suggested that they might shutter the doors for good, a community of people came together to protect the place that 50 years ago sparked an ongoing revolution in LGBTQ rights.
We queer up the USA this evening to report that Jacksonville will require face masks to slow rising coronavirus cases less than 2 months before the GOP convention. Watch this.
A mask mandate is now in effect in Duval County. It officially started at 5 o'clock this evening, and just within the past 15 minutes, the city has changed the age requirement. So here's what you need to know. Masks are required indoors where you cannot socially distance, and anyone over the age of 6 years old. Originally, that was 2 years old. Now it's 6 years old must wear a mask. The beaches, cities are included in this mask mandate, but if you don't have to wear a mask, if you have breathing problems, as the only exception.
The city of Jacksonville said Monday that it would adopt a face mask requirement for public and indoor locations and where social distancing was not possible, less than 2 months before President Donald Trump is set to accept the Republican nomination in the Florida city. The new mandate raises the possibility that attendees could be required to wear face masks at the GOP convention. It comes just 2 weeks after Republicans announced that the president would make his speech in the city.
Next week, Queer Up Vote 2020. Panic sets in at Whitehouse over Trump's re-election prospects. Watch this.
Good afternoon, everyone.
He's not campaigning much, but it doesn't seem to matter. Joe Biden is leading President Trump in several key battleground states. Poll after poll after poll show Biden leads in places like Georgia and North Carolina, even narrowly in ruby red Texas. Biden is pulling ahead as voters continue to disapprove of the president's handling of the pandemic.
Trump's advisors and the greater Republican Party are beginning to feel a sense of panic come over them as more and more polls show the president running well behind challenger Joe Biden for the November election. Early optimism about a booming economic comeback has dampened because of the new coronavirus outbreaks across the country. And with rallies seemingly not feasible for the foreseeable future, the president's allies are not seeing much in the way of realistic ways to swing the momentum going into the summer months.
Next, let's queer up health. New strain of flu found in China has potential to become a pandemic. In a hauntingly familiar announcement, scientists have identified a new strain of swine flu that has all the hallmarks of a potential pandemic. This new disease, called G4EA-H1N1, was first identified in China's pig farm, where an estimated 10% of industry workers have already been exposed. Notably, unlike COVID-19, the incidence of infection increased among younger workers, indicating, quote, increased human infection rates. Unfortunately, while existing flu vaccines are designed to protect against H1N1, present vaccines will provide no protection against G4 viruses.
We queer up business tonight by reporting Facebook and Zuckerberg lost $50 billion among the 100 business boycott over hate speech. The Facebook advertising boycott has expanded to include more big brands this week, with carmaker Ford, clothing giant Adidas, tech firm HP, and U.S. retailer Best Buy, each temporarily pausing spending on the social network. While social media experts remain uncertain of the long-term damage of the ongoing campaign, one industry consultant told Newsweek it may tarnish the entire brand. There are now over 200 companies involved in the Stop Hate for Profit campaign that calls on businesses to limit advertising on the Mark Zuckerberg-led platform due to its allegedly lax policy on hate speech, extremism, and misinformation.
We continue to queer up business with Amazon's video site Twitch suspending Trump's channel, citing hateful conduct. Citing hateful conduct, Amazon's video game streaming site Twitch has formally banned Donald Trump's channel from the platform. The allegations primarily centered around Trump rallies. In two separate rally videos, he makes racist statements about the, quote, tough hombres, rapists, and drug dealers that Mexico knowingly sends across the U.S. border. The decision follows a rough week in which Twitch has been accused of turning a blind eye to sexual abuse and harassment amongst streamers and viewers.
Next tonight, let's catch up on all the news surrounding COVID-19 with our quarantine quickies. The first story tonight is our daily reporting of the coronavirus facts, especially important to the LGBTQ community. First, we report on coronavirus case numbers. Based on standard acceptance of the 7% population of the LGBT community, the world's LGBTQ COVID-19 cases stand at 734,806, while America's LGBTQ COVID-19 cases stand at 188,952. We remind you that America is ground zero of this pandemic. The United States is just 4.4% of the world's population, and today America accounts for 25.7% of all of the world's cases. Next, we report on coronavirus deaths. The world's LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths stand at a staggering 35,743, while here in America, LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths stand at 9,035. The USA accounts for 25.5% of all of the world's deaths. Next, we report testing facts. As of today, we have 33,417,000 tests taken. Queer News Tonight, as a result, recognizes the Hall of Fame top states in testing, which as of tonight is number 3, New York, number 3, New Mexico, number 2, New York, which has crossed the 20% threshold for the first time tonight, and number 1, Rhode Island. Queer News Tonight also recognizes the Hall of Shame states, those states doing the worst job in testing. In LGBT America, we always caution, we hope you don't live in one of these states, which as of tonight are number 5, Kansas, number 4, Colorado, number 3, Oregon, number 2, Idaho, and number 1, Puerto Rico is doing no COVID-19 testing.
Quarantine quickies. Masks. What ones are most effective? Does any mask offer protection from COVID-19? What ones are most effective? This video shows you what mask should be worn when. Watch this.
Next, let's have quarantine quickies. The worst is still on the horizon, warns WHO chief. Watch this.
This morning, a startling new warning from the World Health Organization.
The hard reality is this is not even close to being over. The worst is yet to come.
And a reality check from the CDC.
I think there was a lot of wishful thinking around the country that, hey, summer, everything's going to be fine. We have way too much virus across the country for that right now. So it's very discouraging.
The coronavirus pandemic is, quote, not even close to being over. The World Health Organization warned as the global death toll passed 500,000 and cases surged in Latin America and the United States. COVID-19 is still rampaging across the U.S., which has recorded more than 125,000 deaths and 2.5 million cases, both around a quarter of the global totals. Dr. Fauci said in a statement today that cases could reach 100,000 per day before numbers start to decrease. U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said the April-June quarter was expected to see the largest decline in GDP on record, adding that recovery would depend on government efforts to contain the outbreak.
Well, the news, I watched Dr. Fauci live today in the Senate. He brought everybody to a stop in two sound bites. One affects all of America by saying today we had about mid 40,000 outbreak of new cases and expect it to go to 100,000. And second, for the LGBT community, he had a stern warning that in his opinion, the most dangerous place to be in America was in a bar, which is our cultural hub in LGBT community, and he minced no words at all in terms of the danger of being in a bar.
And I feel really bad for the bars and the workers because still many of them have not been able to get the small business loans. Still many bartenders have not been able to get unemployment assistance. And until the government is willing to step up and help people get through this, it's just going to get worse, the economy is going to get worse, and people are going to keep getting sick because they have to go to work.
We're already in a dire situation. 1 in 4 people are unemployed. 1 in 3 children are going to bed hungry each night. The numbers, 40% increase in mental health breakdowns, suicidal thoughts and depression. We're looking at something that's deeper and scarier than simply just the coronavirus. I'm worried that we're in a place where this kind of uncertainty, we really need leadership who's going to step in place at this moment.
Well, that's our Quarantine Quickies for tonight. And then next we move by queering up a segment called Good News. After we finish our Quarantine Quickies, we like to lighten it up a bit. We've reported all of the statistics and facts for the day, but now we want to report on something that made us smile today in Good News.
I love this good news because I love horror movies. And in Good News today, we report that Friday the 13th's Jason is misunderstood about wearing a face mask. After years of slaughtering camp counselors and teens, Jason Voorhees of Friday the 13th fame is promoting safety in his latest pro-mask COVID-19 PSA. Even literal villains know basic safety, and that's why this is good news. Watch this.
It's not easy. The mask kind of makes people uncomfortable. I wish everyone could see me for who I am. Just trying to fit in. I know, the whole chainsaw thing. I get it. But the thing is, behind the mask, I'm just a regular guy.
It is always better to know how to be safe instead of being scared like the gay community of HIV, and that's why tonight we're broadcasting from our studio set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center. The museum is in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We joke, we're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this living museum possible.
Tonight is part 16 of Q's Q&A on coronavirus and the LGBTQ community, June 30th. This special segment is designed to be unique in America to answer your questions about coronavirus for the LGBTQ community during this pandemic.
Tonight we have an American pioneer in AIDS HIV medical treatment. With us is Dr. Howard Grossman, specialist in internal medicine with an emphasis on HIV. He was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine, and he has become nationally recognized as an educator on HIV issues and as an advocate for the LGBTQ civil rights and the rights of our community.
And he has become a medical expert, in fact, the medical expert, during pandemic for Queer News Tonight. Welcome, Dr. Grossman. And before, again, we get into viewer questions, do you think it's been a big week in America for science and the medical community? And so let's start there. Before we take questions, I just want to ask, what is on your mind this week?
Well, thanks, Alan. Thank you, everybody, for having me back again. And thank you for switching to Tuesdays. I was confused when I walked in, and Misty wasn't here, but Chef Josie was here, and I was What day is it?
It's Misty's husband's birthday, so she took a break.
It's Tuesday, and thank you. Sorry that we still have to do this, but I think we're going to be doing it for a long time. What's been on my mind this week is I think the mishandling of this entire thing that continues to go on. I think public health departments are putting out still way too complicated messages. I think that I happen to personally disagree with closing the beaches. I think there are other things we need to do. I think we need to start putting some oomph behind recommendations. Need to start being requirements for mask wearing and things like that. So I mean, these are some of the things that that's been on my mind this week as we've been talking about all this.
Dr. Grossman, before we get into viewer questions, Dr. Fauci really called it out today. It was a bell ring for the LGBT community. You're a gay doctor. Your office, you're here on Wilton Drive in the gayest place on planet Earth. We have so many LGBT bars and restaurants and restaurant bars so close to us. He called out bars directly today in his testimony before the Senate that bars were the most dangerous place in America. What are your comments about what Dr. Fauci said there in his warning about bars?
Well, I think it's because what we've seen with bars is that they have not adapted for the most part to what's going on. We've seen them packed with people, cheek to jowl, no masks on, carrying on, whether it's inside the bar, outside the bar. Alcohol, of course, is going to lower people's inhibitions. Truthfully, I'm not sure if there's a way that we can rescue bars completely. It seems to me that masks do work to prevent transmission in many cases. And so if there was a modicum of crowd control, and perhaps there was a mask with a straw in it that you could sip your drink, I'm waiting for somebody to invent one. So it's still a relatively sealed system. Nobody's going to cough in your face, sneeze in your face, and all of that. That might be a way of risk reduction and harm reduction that can save some of these places, but I'm not sure. What we have also is that many bars are starting to serve food, because if they have a restaurant license, they haven't fallen under some of these bar restrictions. Now in Florida, they did ban all dispensing of liquor from the bar, but I saw some restaurants in Key West that just moved a bunch of tables up next to the bar, and that was their solution to this.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because for the LGBT community, let's say Wilton Drive, using us as an example, if a bar that is traditionally a bar is now starting to serve cheese boards and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, should we as members of our community worry about any increased risk that they're trying to trick rules in terms of what is going on?
Well, let's face it, they're trying to stay in business. I mean, I understand that. They're trying to keep their employees, whoever they can keep, employed. I think there's good reasons why people are trying to stay open and figure this out. I think that what we haven't had are creative solutions. We need brainstorming going on. How are you going to save the restaurant industry? How are you going to save the movie industry? How are you going to save the bar industry? I mean, these are millions and millions of people in these jobs. You can't just throw them on the street. There are restaurants closing all over the place. Again, Key West, I was there last weekend working. There were a bunch of restaurants that have closed permanently. They just cannot afford to do it. Other restaurants are taking measures. They have tables well more than 6 feet apart. They're limiting people coming in. You have to wear a mask to go to your table. You're basically only exposed to the people at your table. I mean, these are very responsible restaurant owners. I don't see how they're going to stay in business. I went to one restaurant that normally has about 15 tables, and people lined up at the bar eating, and the bar was closed, and there were about 5 tables in the restaurant. How does somebody like that stay in business?
Yeah, and one other related question before we move into viewer questions. Like here in Wilton Manors and Fort Lauderdale, gayest place on planet Earth, what do you think about the bars that are able to do food legitimately and doing shows, like drag shows? Do you think the concentration of shows have any effect, or can they be done safely? Are they being done safely? What do you think?
How do you do a show with social distancing? I'm not sure. I mean, we really do need to figure out this thing about, is it really a mask or social distancing? You know, is there that much more that you benefit risk-wise by doing both? I don't think we really have proof of that yet. And that's a key thing, because I think if you can wear a mask, a well-fitting mask, and be in a more crowded situation, whether, you know, it's people, like we know from the protests, people practiced hand sanitation and wore masks, and we did not see an explosion of infections. Where we have seen explosion of infections are churchgoers who refuse to wear masks. So that 2,100 people without masks, I can only imagine what kind of spreading event that's going to be. You know, so that's, to me, a very good, you know, back of the napkin example of, you know, of why masks are really, really important.
Okay. All right, well, let's jump into our viewer questions. David, let's start with you.
Yeah, a viewer has asked, if the virus spreads when people are asymptomatic, how can temperature checking help stop the spread?
Well, you're talking again harm reduction. You know, you cannot guarantee. You would think that if somebody had a fever that they wouldn't show up somewhere, but we know Americans, and you can't guarantee that. So you might eliminate a certain number of people who definitely are sick but don't want to admit it. So, but I think for the most part, you know, that's just a small thing.
Every gym that I go into, I have the benefit of one of the membership cards that allows you to go into many different gyms. All gyms here in Wilton and Fort Lauderdale are doing a temperature check right from the very beginning. Do you advocate it? Do you think it is a worthwhile precaution?
It's not worthless. I don't think it's going to catch the majority of cases, and certainly the asymptomatic cases don't have any symptoms. And so that's going to continue to spread. But also remember, asymptomatic people seem to have lower viral loads than sick people as well, which is part of why they have perhaps lower responses, antibody responses. So I think it's a very mixed question. I think every tool that we have, we should be using. And the temperature check is just one. I think that people coming into the gyms with a mask is another. I think one thing that I've noticed, even in my gym, is that once you're past the front desk, wearing the mask is optional. Now, my gym has been very responsible. All the machines are 6 feet apart. The cardio machines are 10 feet apart. They really did move everything. They stopped the spin classes where people are going to be sweating all over each other. You know, that kind of thing. So I think they've been very responsible. But really, I'm thinking with these numbers, we're going to have to start wearing masks in the gym. And you know, they're really good about cleaning everybody's cleaning the benches, everybody's cleaning the equipment. I'm going to see that. But I think people are going to have to start thinking about wearing masks.
As we move on tonight in Q News, we reported this new infection out of China. And Josie, you have a question about that.
One viewer asked, I heard that the H1N1 swine flu is back. How will those symptoms look different from COVID-19 symptoms?
Well, I think you said it, Josie. This is not the old H1N1 that we have a vaccine for. You know, hopefully they will develop vaccine. I mean, don't forget, most of these influenza-type viruses, they come out of the pig farms and the chicken farms in Southeast Asia, most specifically in China. And in fact, that is where our CDC used to, I mean, when it had capability to do it, and other health organizations look for emerging viruses. So it's not unusual that these things happen. I think the Chinese have a responsibility to the world to stop some of these breeding grounds. Certainly we have pig farms here in the U.S. and they don't produce these new viruses. But you know, I don't think we know yet all the symptoms. Generally, these flu-like illnesses are basically the same. The difference with COVID-19 is the second phase. It's not the virologic flu-like symptom, it's the next phase when the immune system goes wild and attacks every cell in the body. That's what's killing people. And I'm not sure that this H1N1 does the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Another viewer asks, how are doctors keeping people safe during voluntary procedures?
Well, I mean, considering I just had double hernia surgery, I was, even though at the time I had antibodies and was testing negative for the virus, I still had to go the day before to get tested with a nasal swab to be sure that I was negative. And when I was brought in, you know, and they checked my temperature. There were more screening procedures, and then it was just surgery. I mean, the surgical suites tend to be very, very clean. The surgery room is kept sterile. I mean, so those are probably very safe places to be. Most hospitals are being hugely careful with this and separating out sick patients. I have to mention one of the things with the economic crash is hospitals are going broke. So I know the hospital system I used to work for lost $200 million in the last few months, and the hospitals, one of the hospitals that I'm attending at here, put out a notice today that they expect to lose $2 billion in their system this year. I mean, if our hospitals go, they're firing people left and right. They call it transitioning people. It sounds like people are dying, but they're firing people. They're laying them off. They're putting them on half-time. You know,
Does that include nurses?
Yes, it includes all people in the hospital. So if our hospitals become even more short-staffed, that's going to be a disaster as well. I mean, this economic fallout is completely predictable given the lack of response by the federal government, which gave the money away to Trump's friends and billionaires. And so, you know, as David said, ordinary people are still suffering with no relief in sight.
Another viewer asked, some people put their mask over their mouth, but not their nose. Does that defeat the purpose?
Well, it's better than that guy on the airplane that everybody's passing around who had it over his eyes and not over his mouth at all. I mean, of course, it does defeat much of the purpose. You know, it is going to be some harm reduction because if he coughs or he sneezes, but. You know, I saw a video of somebody who took their mask off to sneeze. I mean, how stupid can you get? That's kind of stuff that is going on because people really don't understand how to use these things.
Yeah, how stupid can you get? I haven't met our governor. Another viewer asks, can smoking or vaping make me more likely to have severe COVID-19 outcome?
Well, anything that's damaged your lungs is going to increase your chance. It's one of the things that we've seen with COVID-19 in that immune cascade is people whose lungs have been absolutely destroyed. I mean, there's at least one person who's had a lung transplant. I'm sure there's probably more that we don't know about. And when you see the pictures of those lungs, I mean, I've never seen smokers' lungs that looked so destroyed. So anything that's going to compromise your lungs is going to be a problem. And that's a long-term problem, too. So young people who think that, oh, I'm going to survive, I don't need to go on a respirator, well, they're finding people with long-term damage to their lungs and nobody's sure what's going to happen with that.
One viewer asked, what about type O blood makes it more resistant to the virus?
I think it's more that type A positive blood is more sensitive. Those people seem to be getting worse cases. I'm not sure why, and I really can't answer the question about O, but it's not that O is making you more resistant.
Okay, this next one is absolutely not from Al. It says, I'm an elderly man in Florida. Will it ever be safe for me to resume public life?
Well, first off, can we acknowledge that was not from me, Dr. Grossman? Okay. It was not from me.
Not from me either.
Right, exactly.
I think that's a big question. I think the elderly, people in their 90s, people in their 80s are the most vulnerable, the most at risk. They've been cooped up for months and months, and for many of them, it's creating really severe mental illness problems, isolation problems. I do think we need to figure out how to do this. So, I've talked to many children of very elderly people here in Florida. And I do think that if somebody's got a backyard and everybody's wearing masks, that it's probably safe to be together. I think that, some of these nursing homes will only let one person out in the hallway at the time. They have to eat in their rooms. I mean, there's a certain thing to be said for quality of life as well as quantity. And I think people need to have choice. And many elderly people are so scared. And we need creative solutions again. We need people to be brainstorming how to do this for 2 years. I mean, I'll give you an example. They're closing all the beaches in Florida. They're closing the beaches in LA County. To me, that's just dumb, okay? The beach is the safest outdoor environment for you to be in. The wind is blowing, it's breaking up aerosols. Do people do it wrong? Are they crowding on the beach? Yes. So why not have patrolling the beach and ticketing people? Give them those little things like the Hertz people have when you check your car back in, that, you know, those automatic things. Ticket these people with a substantial fine and make it obligatory to either wear the mask or be 6 feet apart and not be in large groups. And if people don't do it, every city is hurting for tax revenues. So it seems to me this would be a creative way to increase revenues, because you know people are going to be stupid.
Let's try to ask as we finish tonight's Q&A. Let's try to identify exactly what's going on. As America knows, and we're here in the gayest place in planet Earth here in South Florida, we have had the single worst week. This is now the beginning of July. We have had the single worst week since COVID-19 and coronavirus has begun. This has been the single worst week of this pandemic. Try to help us again understand. First off, I've got to make sure that you are able to deliver the soundbite. The simple things that we're supposed to be doing, if you'll remind us one more time for the 18th or 16th time.
Wear the damn mask. That's number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Practice hand sanitation. Now, in the hospitals, we talk about foaming into a room and foaming out. You've seen us do it, and doctors are the worst at this. That's why they have people wandering around watching to make sure, and reporting on people who don't do it. But you know, that foam sanitizer as you walk into an enclosed space, and you foam out when you leave. So you go to the grocery store,
in and out,
foam your hands.
It just seems so obvious
foam
to me.
in, foam out.
And here's the point. The reason why I wanted you to say that is this morning I went and had breakfast in a restaurant with a friend. The restaurant did a very good job in social isolation. I applauded them very much in their protocols. While we were sitting there, a group of 8 elderly men, all gay, of course, we're in the gayest place on planet Earth, came in. None of the 8 had masks. Some of them were in their 70s. I think some probably were in their 80s. They sat. The restaurant would not allow them to all sit together, so they were separated in 2 tables of 4. They all wanted to sit together. And as I watched them, I kind of took it personal for what you do and what we're doing here at Q News tonight. What haven't we done to help make the LGBT community understand what is going on and what they need to do? Those 8 men were the most highest risk category, and they didn't seem to care.
And they just gave up. You know, it's what we've talked about. It's not limited to the LGBTQ community, and it's not limited to young people, obviously, from your story. But there is in this country, and has been for a long time, what I call an empathy deficit. It's the gated community complex is what I call it. If the people in my gated community, if the people on either side of me, if they're doing okay, everything must be okay. All these stories that I hear out there, I just tune out. And I didn't know anybody who died. I mean, this country shut down very quickly, for the most part. Too late, but quickly. And so places like Florida here, most deaths were in nursing homes, prisons, places that affected the families involved, but not most people. You didn't have refrigerator trucks outside hospitals like New York. You didn't have this constant ambulances. My friend said the ambulances constantly, the sirens going all day, all night in New York. People were, terror was in their face, okay? Even there, you've had some of these gatherings go on, but there are so many people who are so angry about it that there's real shaming going on of people who don't follow the rules. But in places where people didn't see it in their face all the time, they opened up and it was January again. And you had governors who couldn't even put on a face mask the right way, like our own. You have a president who makes this into a political statement. My favorite meme these days is, this mask is not a political statement, it's an intelligence test. And if you're smart, you do what you need to do. I do a Zoom call with about 13 friends of mine from college that we just got back together on Monday nights to talk to each other. And to a single one, they're scared, and they've been taking tremendous precautions. And they're all over the country. They've been taking tremendous precautions, and they're all scared of what's happening around them. So I think lots of people are there. But again, this empathy deficit, it's what's preventing many people from understanding Black Lives Matter.
Well,
it's what keeps people from understanding what LGBTQ, especially transgender people, go through. And we saw it in the HIV epidemic. How often I saw somebody would get HIV and they or their parents would suddenly go, oh my God, there's no health insurance? How come this isn't all taken care of? Why does my kid have to be, get their food, on a plastic tray? How long has this been going on? How many times they ask that? And you go, freaking forever? And you just put your head in the sand, And it's like, I remember Vito Russo used to say that, and he said in one speech that for us who were involved in the HIV epidemic, we were in a war all the time, but it was a war that nobody saw. And bombs would go off, and your friends over here would disappear, and your friends over here would disappear, and nobody saw it. The people outside our communities had no idea what it was. Even my parents, who were incredibly supportive, who marched with me in the parades, they were incredibly supportive. I remember my mom saying around 2000, when things started to change and get a little bit better, she said, I had no idea what you went through. I really didn't understand how much death you saw, how difficult it was. And I think that that's the story that's carrying this.
Well, and Dr. Grossman tells a beautiful story, both from a COVID standpoint and an HIV connection. Dr. Grossman is one of the most respected HIV virologists in America, and why we love him as our gay doc for Q News Tonight. We do not have empathy deficit here at Q News Tonight. This has been the worst week, and we will recommit again to try to provide as accurate information for you as possible. It is a very serious situation. But America, and especially the LGBTQ community, you've got to be listening to what our medical advice is and what our scientists are saying. You can't listen generally to the politicians, because they're going to lead you astray. So that's it for part 16 consecutive weeks of Q's Q&A on coronavirus and the LGBT community. We're here every week. We have moved our segment from Thursday to Tuesday nights. This is the first time we have done it on Tuesday, and we will continue from there to be able to accommodate Dr. Grossman to go to Key West to continue in his practice. And we encourage you to do that at Midway Medical if you're here in South Florida, in Key West, etc. Midway, I'm sorry. Thank you. I didn't have a prompt note. Right, yeah. So every week we're here to bring you viewer questions and the most important medical advice from our medical expert, Dr. Howard Grossman. And as always, Dr. Grossman, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And the last thing, when you come home from outside, remember what Mom used to say, when you come in from the street, wash your hands.
Wash your hands. I love the image. Wash your hands in, wash your hands out. It's such a simple concept. So simple. Into a restaurant, out of a restaurant, into wherever, CVS, and out. All right. Well, we end tonight's broadcast of Q News Tonight with the big finish. These are short story mentions of LGBTQ news or news with a gay perspective that are a little more fun. Let's finish the show that way. So here we go. First on Q News Tonight's The Big Finish. Our first story. Hairspray star Nikki Bronski came out as gay over the weekend for Pride.
This is my surprised face. No, it's not.
I'm hearing a little Missy Elliott and Lizzo tempo song. I think I need a thick bitch.
Hairspray is John Waters' masterpiece about racial tension in the capital region of Baltimore and D.C., set in the early 1960s. Or wait, are we talking about today's storylines? The only difference is that Nikki's mom was played by, in drag by John Travolta. And unfortunately, John's not playing the performance tonight. His understudy sidekick, Vice President Mike Pence, will be doing it. The big finish. Trump's old Obama insults come back to haunt him amid new Russia scandals. You see me sit up.
The reply to this tweet, as you can see on screen from Jeff Tiedrich, sums up the whole thing. This tweet is aged like a bottle of Thunderbird in a Skid Row flophouse.
I wish one of his slutty nights in his early days would come back to haunt him with a viral disease that would rot his...
Gonosyphilis.
I'm sorry, what did you say? In a time-honored American tradition, the white man talking shit about the job the black man does can't do it for himself. Oh, shocking. I know, this whole thing is just shocking. Shocking. The big finish. Hillary Clinton repurposes Donald Trump's slogan for the sarcastic dig at pandemic response.
Winning, our numbers are the best numbers, the biggest, huge.
Thank you, Madam President.
We're making America great again. This is really a funny joke. Seriously, Hillary has not a single funny bone in her body. But the sad observation is, if Hillary was this personable years ago, we would have already had our first female president. Years later, after watching Trump burn the world, I'm really disappointed in Clinton. And that's why I want to chant right now, lock her up, lock her up. Yeah. The big finish. No Context Tuesday. Protesters set up a guillotine in front of Jeff Bezos' D.C. home.
Well, it looks like working class people are looking to give him the chop.
God, guys, protests. I know, remember they're supposed to stay peaceful.
Amazon stockholders have gotten just a little bit too competitive when it comes to the idea of reducing overhead at Amazon. I'm going to let that sit.
It's a dad joke.
The big finish. Did you know that swarms of locusts are devastating parts of northern Kenya?
Florida's gotten a plague of iguanas instead of frogs. Kenya has locusts. What were the other plagues again?
Exactly. I'm seeing the end of the world coming near.
It's a very sad day for those who had plague of locusts in their July on their 2020 apocalypse bingo cards.
Oh.
The big finish. Burger King changes its logo to Burger Queer to honor Pride Month.
I'll be your Burger Queer. Want to try my Whopper? It's got king sauce.
Oh,
ew.
Oh, okay. Listen, I'm all about supporting Pride, but couldn't you come up with something better than that? That doesn't even make sense. I'm not even, well, whatever, it doesn't matter.
It's a double Whopper.
At the end of the day, even if they miss, Burger King versus Chick-fil-A.
Oh, boy.
Undying support for the BK. But even in the year 2020, a corporation would rather be gay than be a woman. So close, Burger King, just one letter off.
Oh.
And speaking of Burger Queer, that's today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show.
Remember, if it's important to the LGBTQ community, it's important to Queer News Tonight. But But you must help us. Click subscribe on YouTube and share this news.
We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. This is the only source of live LGBTQ news in the entire world. Your community needs your support.
You are not alone. We will get through this crisis.
We are here with you, and this is Queer News Tonight.
So thank you for joining us, America. I'm Al Ferguson, and on behalf of my partners, David Hopkins and Chef Josie, we will see you daily and tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Good night.